are listening to the Justin Beahm Radio Hour.
Welcome to the Radio Hour podcast. I'm your host, Justin Beahm. Today's guest is Sue Howison, co-founder of Dark Delicacies in Burbank, California. You may have heard of Dark Delicacies, even if you haven't had a chance to visit there. It's an iconic store that has been serving horror fans for decades. They've moved several locations over time, but Del and his wife, Sue, co-founder, are finally going to take the big step to retire. Well earned, by my estimation, although it's going to leave a huge chasm in the horror community for sure. Dark Delicacies has been the heart of the horror collector community, certainly out there in the Los Angeles area, for all that time that they've had their doors open. So many signings, hundreds of signings over the years with everybody who you can imagine. It's a remarkable lineup of people. In fact, at one point, Del, Sue, and I were talking about the possibility of a documentary on the store. Sue has a running file of photos and notes from all the different signings they've done. And I said hundreds a minute ago. It runs in the thousands. It really does. And it's not just publishing. This is film. It's collectibles, toys, all kinds of stuff. They've had signings for a lot of projects that I've been a part of. They're always so open and generous with bringing people in. Some of the things I've done there, I think I put together a Sharknado signing when that came out. I did Return of the Killer Shrews I put together for my friend Steve Latshaw, the director of that film. I did a Christine signing that I put together with my buddy Bill Gibson, who's owner of Christine Movie Car. And we went out there and we had a lot of fun actually that weekend where we went for the signing. Not only did we have a lot of cast and crew on hand at Dark Delicacies, but then Bill and I took Christine all around to different filming locations, which was an absolute blast. And I was doing interviews with people during that time as well, which are going to come into play at some point pretty soon, actually. We'll have some announcements coming up on that. The Remind magazine that I was brought in as guest editor on, that was all Halloween. That was a tremendous signing there at Dark Delicacies. Let me think. Alligator 1 and 2, when those came out from Shout Factory, we did a signing there for those. The list just goes on. And you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that's working in the genre today who hasn't been in there with a Sharpie in their hand. And this isn't even talking about the store. The store itself is remarkable, eternally in service to all kinds of creators, from independent to top-tier studio folks in the realms of publishing and movies. They have a tremendous lineup of collectibles, toys, and wearables, things like that, comic books, magazines. You can always get the latest in all the genre magazines. At the heart of it all, though, are Del and Sue, the most adorable couple you're ever going to find. They're so great. They remember the people who come in the store. They make everyone feel really at home. And it was an honor to connect with Del for the conversation you're going to hear tonight. This was recorded a few months ago, actually. At the time, I had intended on releasing this to sort of gear up for the final year of the store. But in the end, I figured, there's going to be a lot of other things going on with Dark Delicacies in their final season, I guess you could say. And I wanted to have it fall when the store was actually about to close their doors. And as this episode lands, they're just mere weeks away from their final day of business. They do have a couple signings left on their roster. If you go to darkdel.com, they have signed books on there, movies. They never mark them up either. You can get signed copies of things for no upcharge, which is a tremendous gift for collectors for sure. And Sue always ships them with a lot of care put into the packaging for them as well. So, really, I can't say enough about Dark Delicacies and all that they've meant. This episode is a tribute to Del and to Sue. A big tip of the hat to the whole crew there that's come and gone over the years. Certainly to everyone who's ever attended a signing event or had their work within those walls. It's an honor. It feels like a rite of passage. And the first time I was a part of something there, it was really, really special. They're all unforgettable, though. So I hope you enjoy the chat that I had with Del. Again, this was a lot earlier than now, so he was still looking ahead at what was to come in their final year, and here we are right at the doorstep of that final year. So keep that in mind as you're listening. But a great conversation nonetheless. lovely look back at his relationship with Sue, which is something the two of them don't often talk about. So that's kind of a gem on the episode today, and I really hope you enjoy that. As for news and updates from my side of things, the book that I just released, Roadside Memories, Beloved and Bizarre Attractions from North America's Past, is now shipping. It's available from my site, justinbeam.com. I'm signing all those for people who order, and you can also pick it up from Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Any bookseller can get it for you. Really appreciate all the feedback. Everyone has picked one up. All the pre-orders shipped right away as soon as the book showed up. And it's still the case that if you place an order through the site, it'll be out in the mail the following day usually, barring a Sunday, of course, and I'll get that right out to you. So thanks to everyone who has picked up the book and sent their feedback on it. And just briefly, the book it's a collection of the first 27 entries of my Roadside Memories column from Remind magazine, which is TV Guide's entertainment nostalgia rag. I love writing this column. In fact, I just turned in my newest one today. That's going to be in an upcoming issue. It's always a joy to track down these stories and share them. And for the book, I got to expand on the footprint that I have in the magazine and add additional information, new sidebar stories. There's extensive interviews in there. There's all kinds of stuff. Great photos that there wasn't room for in any of the magazine months that these columns were running. Thank you so much for checking it out. And I do hope you pick up a copy or request that your local bookstore carry it. It is available through Ingram, Ingram, which is the biggest distributor of books in North America. So any bookstore can get it and put it on their shelves. It's an easy read. You can go chapter to chapter, one at a time. Perfect for traveling. It's just a fun read that I hope you do enjoy. Upcoming releases for Reverend Entertainment in terms of video stuff that's on the way. We have The Fall hitting 4K from Umbrella on May 7th. The pre-orders are open on that. And then we have Long Kiss Goodnight on 4K from Arrow. That's a day later on May 8th. Vice Squad has been announced by Kino on 4K, which is coming out May 13th. And then in July, we have the Bewitched Complete Series Blu-ray set from Mill Creek that features all kinds of good stuff from my Reverend Entertainment and all the folks who I've teamed up with on these. So keep an eye on the latest on my site on the Coming Soon page. There's also a subscription thing you can hit when you first visit the site. A little thing will pop up saying, do you want to be on the mailing list? And then anytime I put a post up, it'll shoot you a quick email letting you know what's going on. Outside of all that, I am just days away from heading back to Kansas to continue shooting on my documentary Cooksey about my sculptor friend Chris Cooksey. Really, really excited to get back down there and continue the process on that. And outside of that, I have a couple of appearances I'll be announcing pretty soon, as well as a couple new projects too, including a narrative thing that I've been wanting to return to for over 10 years. Can't wait to share that with you guys. But for now, let's go to Burbank. Let's head in through the doors of Dark Delicacies and a conversation with Del Howison. Doctor, let's talk about, before we get into everything else, No Solicitors is such a memorable Dell moment for me. We actually got names. Our characters had names.
We did.
I was Dr. Bedard. What was yours? Oh,
I'd have
Dr.
to look it up.
Esposito.
What was it?
Dr. Esposito was you.
Oh, Esposito, because I look, Latin.
Why did we even have names?
I don't know. Nobody ever called me. Yeah.
How did you end up involved in that?
Felissa.
Yep, same for me.
Yeah, she got in touch and said, "Hey, do you want to work, next week or 3 days from now or whatever?" It was her and Mike. I don't remember his last name, the bodybuilder kind of guy that was hanging around.
Marv Blauvelt.
Marv, yeah. And I loved that studio.
Yeah.
That was that multi-layered building, and it'd be like, here's the doctor set, and upstairs is the cop shop and whatever.
Yeah. That was at Central City Stages in LA. So to set the stage for everybody, it was the same for me. Felissa Rose of Sleepaway Camp fame, of course. She has been doing a lot of producing over the last few years. And this is a while ago. This is probably 10 years ago now, 2014, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
I would say about right.
And she
Here, let me
called.
get off the screen and go look it up on IMDb.
Well, Felissa called me and she said, "Hey, do you want to come be a doctor in this thing for a day?" I had no idea that you were part of it.
And I didn't know you were there.
And that was the best because I walk in and then you're sitting there in the makeup room or whatever it was, the costume room. I'm like, "Oh, Del, this is hey,
What are we doing?
what are we doing here?" And yeah, anyway, we each had brief scenes in this movie, no solicitors, and it was a lot of fun. John Callis was the director, but Felissa seemed to really be involved with that. She was real
Have
hands-on
you
in the
worked
production.
with her since then?
I haven't. She asked me to come and it's so funny because acting has never been a focus for me at all. I mean, I have a bunch of bit parts and things like,
Right.
where I get killed in a scene or whatever, or play a cop. And she she asked me to come in and read for another film that she was doing after this. I think it was a different film for some cop role. And I'm sure I didn't read very well for it because I don't know anything about acting or whatever.
I
But I
ended up with her in the video for one of those groups that put out a new album, and she was producer on that video. All took place in the woman's prison in L.A.
Oh
They
wow.
used that as it's the old woman's prison, and they had a jailbreak and all this other stuff. So I got to take off my doctor clothes and put on an orange jumpsuit, and the group I never, Slayer, Megadeth. I don't know who the hell it was. It was somebody, and it was their first album since they had lost a band member some years
Mm.
before, and they were there playing live. I'll never get that one song out of my head because we heard it about 50 times,
Yeah, that's
but it,
great.
it
Now
was
you
all
have
nice. It was just really, really hot, and we were in the prison courtyard, so there was just stone walls on all four sides of us.
yeah, it's like you're cooking in the
Yeah.
middle of this clay. Yeah. You've had such an incredible journey, Del. I mean, your story is it's so wildly diverse and
Even more so than you know.
oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I want to talk about a few things that you've referenced in the past as being instrumental for you. And I want to start with Peter Straub's Ghost Story. Tell me about when you first read Ghost Story.
I was living in Detroit, or Royal Oak, actually, Birmingham, Royal Oak area in Michigan. And it was a summer, and I had the book, and I lived with two other guys. Little breeze, little summertime, reading the book in broad daylight. And there were so many times that I just had to stop and set the book down because it was shudder inducing, we should say. And it was crazy, man. It was like I'd read a lot of horror. I'd read King and all these other people, Poe, everybody. And they all had different effects. But this Straub book just knocked me out. I was lucky because then years later, I got to be friends with him. We were drinking buddies at conventions. It was pretty good. But I did interviews with him and all kinds of things. He was a really sweet guy.
It's amazing that a book can take you somewhere like that. Did you have anyone when you were younger, when you were growing up? Did you have a teacher that really kind of opened some doors for you internally or externally? Did you have
I
anyone
had
like
an
that?
English teacher in high school. I think it was probably my sophomore year,
Hmm.
and I did my first writing with her, and I really became more involved in reading instead of just reading crap. It was reading books that had some merit to them.
Hmm.
And it was beyond Cat in the Hat and Pokey Little Puppy. It was they were stronger than that, and I think that stayed with me forever. I'd love to meet her again, but being my age, I'm sure she's probably long gone.
Yeah. I had a couple teachers like that, and it just is so incredible to have an adult believe in you. It's incredible for them to see something in you that you didn't even know to look for, or maybe that you weren't getting elsewhere. And I'm always a cheerleader for the power of a teacher and an influential adult as a positive influence in the lives of kids.
Well,
And
and
then
don't forget, you also taught at the university with me one day. just one day.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, Dell and I ended up going to speak to a class at this university, and it was in Burbank, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And that would have been around the same time that we shot that film, somewhere in that
yeah,
vicinity, I
same.
think.
It would have been within the same 6 months or a year, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And that was great fun. I'm sure that you've had a lot of opportunities like that where you've gotten a chance to talk to some young writers and things. Have you done more of that kind of thing?
I've been. I went to that same class with Tiffany Shepis,
Oh,
and we did kind of it was more like a two-person panel, not teaching, but
yeah.
it was them asking questions, and that instructor was very cool because his synopsis, or whatever the hell it's called in college,
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
all about horror. He was teaching them American horror. So that worked out really well, both for you and Tiffany Shepis to come along. And he came to the store one day. He came to Dark Delicacies and said, "Would you be interested in dropping in just as a guest? It breaks up the class. It gives
Mhm.
the kids something else to look at." So
Yeah.
it's been fun. And then every Sunday for several years, we had a Writers Coffee House, which was a spinoff from the Jonathan Mayberry run Writers Coffee House down in San Diego.
Mm.
And there was probably 15 to 25 people at that every Sunday, once a month, when we would have it, and it would always be on a particular topic and lively discussion. It was great. I don't know if it helped anybody, but they certainly came back, so that was fun.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm curious about your process. There's this quote from Stephen King that I love where he says, "Write with the door closed, revise with the door open if you must." And I'm curious, what's your policy for your writing? Do you structure your time? Do you keep that door closed, or are you open in discussion with others as you're doing it?
Sometimes the door is open. Um, Sometimes the TV in the other room, or whatever it is that maybe my wife is doing, is too distracting. But I've learned to spatially grab the time. Like if I've got 10 minutes and I have an idea, I take the 10 minutes and sit
Mhm.
down at the laptop. Other things, you'll like this. Let me show you this. I didn't know this was going to come up because we're at my writing computer here. If I get an idea, and I'm not one of those that sleep with a pad by the bed,
Mhm.
but if I get an idea or a line of dialogue, or sometimes I'll dream an entire scene, has nothing to do with anything else. I need to record it because I realize I have lost a line. Wake up in the morning and go, what the fuck was that about? What
Yeah,
was, you know, it had
I'm
to
the
do with
same.
a big fish, I think.
Yeah.
So I started a file on on the computer, and I can get up, turn it on, spend 10 minutes typing it out, and then later I'll print it. And it's called Wild Lines. This is
Hmm.
probably backwards to everybody. Um, and this is sometimes when I'm just looking for inspiration, sometimes when I'm doing a scene and I look down and I go, oh, yeah, she would say that, or he would say that, or that scene would happen. Then I pull from it, scratch it off. This file constantly gets bigger and smaller as I
Yeah.
put things in it and steal things from it.
How far back does that go, that file?
Now I don't know because it's not that old. I mean, the Wild Lines idea is that old, but
Mhm.
that file is not that old because when I use something, I draw a line through it. And when I add something, I add it to the paper. And then when the thing gets too full, I just send the document to the printer and it prints up, and I throw away this document. So that's why it constantly changes size
Yeah.
too, because
Right.
I'm always deleting and adding.
Yeah. That's interesting. I forget everything the second I wake up. I can have these vivid dreams and it's so frustrating. I know I had tried at one point doing a digital recorder, just having that sitting next to the bed. Now we can do it even on phones with voice memo. And so
Right.
that's what I found myself using the most. But I love the idea of a running catalog of just snippets like that.
Snippets. That's it
That's great.
entirely. And the thing is, for me, writing it down kind of puts in my head that I have it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I just put it on a recorder, I wouldn't know necessarily where to go back to.
Mm, yeah.
So these are just crazy. Sometimes it's definitions,
Mm,
and sometimes it's a piece of dialogue. It's like, here's a great line: I am not reactionary. I wait until everything is calmed down, and then I walk into your room with a double barrel and blow your goddamn head off. That's the whole line.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the line right next to it might say, "The sun will come up tomorrow, whether you're here or not. It doesn't make
Mm,
any difference."
mm,
So they're not associated at all. It's
right.
just, boom. Let me write that down.
Yeah. There's something about having a tangible element, a tangible connection. I've thought a lot about over the years. My dad's typewriter when I was a kid, and how important that was for me to have the physical interaction with the medium like that. It's like
I
and,
started on a regular typewriter like that,
yeah.
and then my mom had one of those IBM Select with the ball. That
Oh yeah. Yep.
um, probably half the
It,
people watching this don't know what I'm talking about. But it was a ball on the head of the thing that instead of keys striking, it would just turn and strike. It was very
yeah.
odd when you think about it.
Yeah. It looks cool though. I think Kolchak might have had that on his typewriter at the beginning of
Yeah.
Night Stalker, if I remember.
Typing out the newspaper articles.
Yeah. Well, it was that way with that connection as a drummer. It's the same thing. I've never used fabricated sticks. I really am a firm believer in the wood, like hand to wood to drumhead interaction. And
Right,
writing's the same way. I can't write as fast as I think. So I have to type for sure with this
right.
stuff, but I can't just like say something into something that's capturing and turning it into text. I need to type it out. I need to feel the keys and all
I'm
that.
very tactile that way
Yeah.
in needing the things too.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Well,
fact,
and
go ahead.
hence the bookstore, right? I mean,
There you
yeah,
go.
we like to hold our medium.
And here we are on the, it's almost exactly 1 year left of the
Yep.
bookstore.
That's right.
But it's kind of cool. I was reading an article in Writer's Digest online yesterday, and the article was about how do you know when you've completed your manuscript? How do you know when you're done? And I
Yeah.
remember Anne Rice saying, because my husband puts a bottle of champagne in the refrigerator.
Oh.
But one of the people answering that question in the article had the exact same feeling I was when, because I go over and over and over. My book, Margaret Thomas, I think I rewrote 8 to 10 times because it's an obsessive thing. One of the people in the article rewrote their book 25 times, but their line was, when I can't stand to read another sentence in my project, I know I'm finished.
Mm.
It's
And
kind of
that's where
like,
you're at.
I do that all the time. I finally get to the point where I go, it must be done because I can't look at this again. And there's times that I really try. I'll put it away for, 3 weeks in a drawer and then bring it out, and some of it's fresh to me again, and it's
Yeah.
okay. But yeah, there comes a time if I'm going to do this again, I'm going to throw up. So the book must be done or the story must be done.
And would you say, do you bring that story up as tied into the closure of the store? Do you feel like it's something like I'm ready to stop going in there?
You know, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't had that thought, but Um, yeah, there definitely comes a point where when you start out, it's like, yeah, fresh faced and gung ho. And after 30 years, you go, yep.
What day is it again? Yeah.
What day is it? Do I go in again tomorrow? So I like it. I love it. I couldn't have done 30 years without loving it and having somebody like Sue as my partner. It would not have existed.
Yeah.
But I'm ready. After 30 years, that's a long run for a mom and pop, especially in LA.
Mm,
And I'm ready to say, hey, let's get on with other stuff. I can take time now and really concentrate on writing or whatever.
yeah. We'll touch more on the closure of the store a little bit later on here. I'd like to turn back the clock, though, to when it all began. At the time when you came up with the concept for Dark Delicacies, I believe you were working for Fastener Supply Company
Right?
and Sue was with Nestle at the
Right.
time.
Nestle's World Headquarters. Yeah. Or
Yeah,
Nestle's
and
USA headquarters.
what what led to you guys embarking on this journey? And I remember you telling me at one point about some seed money from your mom or something that you guys had sort of tucked away somewhere. Can you tell the tale at the beginning?
Yeah, it was big bucks too. My mom and my dad were divorced, and my mom put some money aside. Here, this is for your sister, and here, this is for you, and it's there. Whenever you need it, it's there. It wasn't like she had to pass away for us to get it or anything like that. Here's your money. If you like blow it out in Vegas or something, that's your problem, you know.
Yeah.
But here's your money, and it was $5,000, which is, as you know, nothing. But it was something because we were able to take our collection, because we collected horror books and horror films and tchotchkes and stuff like that, and the
Mhm.
$5,000, and open our first store, lease a space. At that time, we're talking 1994.
Mhm.
So we were able to lease a space and have things in there, and then we had to find book racks and display cases, and people don't, I mean, you just don't get here, we need to buy a rack to hang these t-shirts up, or whatever it is, and people don't realize all the other stuff. Oh, we have to buy toilet paper for the restroom, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. And we were there painting, and a friend of mine by the name of Jay Patton, who lived in Phoenix and had a bookstore called the Bent Cover, and moved to a new location. When he did, he got all new bookcases for the new store.
Mm.
He took down the metal bookcases that were on his wall, loaded them into his van, drove to Burbank from Phoenix, showed up about 7 o'clock one night. We were in the store painting, had no idea. He said, "Help me unload this," opened the van up. We got all the bookcases out, our job to put them up on the wall. He got back in his van and drove back to Phoenix. And there was things like that that happened all along that helped facilitate it. And it's funny how something in actuality that was very small but very big, and it made difference. It made changes.
That's incredible that you guys could, I mean, having the motivation to do something is very different than going through the drudgery of building something from the ground up. And I mean, this is whether it's a book, whether it's a film, or whatever it is. I mean, that really takes an extra special kind of patience and
We had drive. I know that.
drive. And then as a
Luckily, we had a lot of stupidity because we didn't know we didn't know what we were getting into all the way. It
yeah,
was a weird time, '94, to open a bookstore. It was just the beginning of Amazon days and big box store days like Barnes and Noble and Borders. There was so much going on, and we worked through all of that stuff.
yeah,
I
it's been
can't.
so
And we opened it with our own collection. I mean, we had our collection where we collected horror books and horror movies and stuff. That was what we sold. We put it on the shelf. Here's these books for sale. We had no accounts with publishers,
mhm,
no accounts with manufacturers. There weren't the things that go on today. There weren't all the conventions. The reason we opened up is because we bought a table at a comic convention in a Red Lion hotel in their banquet room. They were having a comic book connection. And we did it, and we put some of our stuff there, and it sold. A lot of it sold. And I thought, well, this makes sense. And
mm,
then I'm driving by this storefront near our home, and it was for lease. I went in, I talked to the guy. It was like impulse, impulse, impulse. And I called Sue on the phone and said, "I've got your store." And she goes, "What do you mean you've got my store?" And that's what happened. And then we loaded it with our stuff. And we started selling our own things. We would sell a book. Sue would go in the back room and cry because she just sold part of her collection.
Mhm.
Then she would come back out, sell the next one. And
Mm.
it all just, it was a combination of so many things. Timing was right. We were really lucky in some cases. Locations were very lucky for us. And we were both working full time at the time we opened the store. So, yeah. I mean, if we had just stopped and said, "Does this make any sense to you?" No way, we wouldn't have done it.
That's a big part of being an artist, is just casting that aside. It's like, how do you justify time? What's the return on investment for our days and our hours?
That's it. No matter what you do as an artist, you can never get like, how much am I making per hour? You might as well
Right.
throw that crap right out the window.
Yep, exactly. And you've also talked a little bit about Dangerous Visions, the old shop that was in Sherman Oaks.
Right.
They kind of helped you establish a playbook for events and signings. Is that
The
right?
way they were doing it was what enticed me. It was Art and Lydia that ran that store, and they were good friends with Harlan, so that's why the store was called Dangerous Visions.
Hmm.
And we went to signings there before we ever thought about opening a store. And it was one of the things that stayed in our head that we said we need to incorporate that idea into the store. And like I think Sarah Karloff was our first signer
Yep.
in our first month, and we never had a month since then that we didn't have signers, and now we have signers like 8 times a month,
Mm.
every weekend and stuff like that.
That's
We knew
incredible.
nobody. We knew nobody.
Yeah. But they were drawn to you.
They were
People have
what?
people have been drawn to you guys though. So you didn't know anybody, but as you start to do these things and you show through professionalism and through courtesy and things like that, that's what earns the trust of the people to come back and talk to their friends. Oh, you guys, you should do a signing there, kind of a thing. The word of mouth is
The
tremendous.
word of mouth is great, and the word of mouth between the signers is great. I've had people come in and sign. Oh, Mick Garris sent me over to talk to you. He thought this would be a good place. In fact, I have one coming up. I know we don't want to date these tapes probably, but I have one coming up a week from Saturday with Charles Fleischer,
Hmm.
who was the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And he wrote a short story book, and he just walked in the store one day. I was behind the counter, and he goes, "Mick Garris told me I should come in here about show you this book." And boom, we got a signing with Charles Fleischer. I wouldn't know how to contact him. I don't, and at the same time, I can't forget the fans, because many, many, many of them have been there from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And um, they learned our playbook, and the vast majority of them, 98% of them, because there's always, a ding dong out there somewhere, but the vast majority of them out there know how it's set up, know how it's run, knows the rules, and we don't have a lick of trouble. And I think part of that is because the same reason we don't have a big problem in losing goods to stealing is that people think of it as their own clubhouse. So it would be like if you're standing next you are standing next to somebody in the store and you see him go, "Oh, I'm going to take that, put it in my," you're going to say something or you're going to do something because it feels like yours,
Mm.
and you
Yeah.
feel violated when the store is violated.
Yeah.
And I
There's a
think that store family kind of thing is what did it. I think our first real support came from two celebrities. One was Peter Atkins, the writer and screenwriter of Wishmaster and Hellraiser 234.
Mhm.
He walked into the store one day out of the blue, said, "You have my book on the shelf. Can I sign them for you?" And he signed the books, and we had signed books in the store for the first time. And it was like, he also said, "Oh, by the way, if you want to go broke, go into publishing." And then he left. I had Frank Darabont come in with the script he had written to Frankenstein. And he said, "Here's the script, and now you can see what they did to my movie.
Mm.
So we had a signed script from Frank Darabont, which had tipped in art from Bernie Wrightson in it
Wow.
because he collected Bernie Wrightson. So he used the Bernie Wrightson art as reference to his. But the strangest celebrity in the beginning and has been with us ever since was Sue and I went down to the Pantages one day in Hollywood to be part of the crowd. They were filming a movie. So we went down there, and you could be in the audience at the Pantages because they were filming a scene that was supposed to be a stage show and they needed audience. So they had as many people come as they could. And it was Lord of Illusion, the Clive Barker movie.
Yeah.
And at one point, everybody had under their chair, that old gag, there's a number or a whatever. And you all pulled out your number. And Clive was up on stage and he said, whoever has this number will be in a scene with us at the Magic Castle next week. It was my number. I went up on stage and met Clive for the first time in my life. And we have been friends all the way until now. We're still friends.
Oh, that's incredible. And you guys have embarked on some publishing journeys together too. You've done some anthologies
We've
together.
done books together, but they were always published by like New York publishers. We didn't do any self-publishing.
Right.
Like we had done Midian Unmade,
Yep.
the anthology, and
Which is
it
an
was
extension of the
Delacicies.
Hellraiser. Yeah.
Yeah, it was following the Cabal. So Cabal came out, and at the end of Cabal, spoiler alert for all of you who don't. So at the end of Cabal, or Nightbreed, whichever one you're familiar with, all the monsters live in an underground city under the cemetery, and they are all driven out into the world. So these stories pick up with each one of the monsters and what happens to them as they are trying to get back together as a cabal. And
So
Clive
cool.
also he submitted a story into the first Dark Delicacies anthology. He submitted a sonnet into the second Dark Delicacies
Oh,
anthology. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time together over the years. As you get older, you spend less time with the people you like spending time with. But we still
yeah.
talk on email and we still are in touch with each other.
How is he doing now?
He's as good as he's going to be, I think. I mean, he's still productive. He's still putting stuff out there,
Mm-hmm.
but he's doing shows, which I wish he wouldn't do because it's not probably great for his health. Where he's going out and doing those things at conventions where you can buy photo ops and
Oh, yeah.
stay home, take care
Yeah.
of yourself, just write,
Yeah.
use the genius you got.
Yeah. You've been to his house, right?
Many times.
Yeah. Tell people what the experience is like when you walk in there. I mean, just the artwork that he has
Well, when I
is
first met him, he had 3 houses. All 3 of them, I guess, were in the hills of Beverly Hills. And you went up the road, and the first house was the offices of, I don't know what he called it, Barker Enterprise or something. So that's
yeah.
where his secretaries were and all of that kind of stuff. The second house was the painting house. That's where all the big paintings were. And he did canvases like the size of the wall behind me, where
Yeah.
I saw him have to jump up and hit something one time when Sue and I were there watching. And then the third house is where he lived, or it was the other way around, but it was the 3 houses, and that's what they were used for. So it was very, very cool. And, um, over time, it felt pretty good. First time I went there, I thought his dogs were going to eat me. I got locked inside the gate going to the front door, and all of a sudden, these 3 big dogs come running out, but they didn't do anything, so it was good.
You were on the good list, not
Yeah, I
the
was
naughty
on the
list,
good.
I
I didn't
take.
smell right, I
Yeah.
guess.
All right. Okay, well, let's continue the discussion a little bit about the signings. And you mentioned Sarah Karloff as an
Right,
early one, of
right.
course, the first one there. When when things go wrong at the signings, it's happening in real time. It's
Right.
like doing it's theater compared to film, right? It's not a really controlled environment when it's going wrong. And you don't have to say names. I'm not looking for dirt or anything like that on anyone, but what are some of the wilder experiences that you've had with some of these signings over the years?
Well, first off, I'm doing them with Sue, so things run amok immediately. No, it's great. Our team is very good. You have this job, you have that job, you have this job. It kind of goes like clockwork, and with the way the customers are and as used as they are to our signings, that goes well. We've had a few Odkins signing. One of the problems, and if you're an author out there and you're self published, I have nothing against you, but even less than a main publisher, you have no publicity machine putting out your stuff. I put out stuff for you on the upcoming signing, but their mailing list is different from mine. You will reach twice, three times as many people on your mailing list.
Hmm.
So the ones that just go, oh, good, you're going to do the signing? Yeah, that's great. And they never forward the stuff I send to them, or they never put out their own announcement or something. And five people show up because nobody knows the name or anything like that. And they wonder why it's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
Help me out a little bit. Meet me halfway. It's like God in the lottery tickets, buy a ticket for Christ's sake. So,
Yeah, we gotta
um,
hustle.
and then we've had ones like there was one who was a celebrity guy. He was signing a DVD that was like a low B movie that he got into because he hadn't worked for a while. And the director was there, and the producer was there, and he was there, and his name was part of the draw of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was pouring. We don't get rain like that in LA. It was pouring. And so nobody came out. And all he did while he was there then was make snide remarks and nasty things about it because nobody had shown up in the middle of a monsoon. Sorry. So you just have to let that kind of stuff go. On the other hand, we've had some kind of magical ones that have happened. Like we were doing fundraising. We used to do a calendar and stuff. Every year we would publish for charitable causes. And one year we were doing a fundraiser for something, auctioning off different items. And Thomas Jane said, I'll tell you what, let's get the highest bidder, and I will come to your store and deliver pizzas and have pizza with the winners.
Ah,
So the people won, and it was a guy and his wife, and I think their kid. And of course, we had another rainstorm, and they still came to the store. It was like a Saturday morning, about 11 o'clock in the morning, like the earliest you could get a pizza. And they were there. Sure as hell, this car pulls up. Thomas Jane gets out, has a couple of pizzas, runs into the store, puts them down, spends about a half hour there with them and stuff,
mm,
and goes away because they won the bid. Those kind of times are magic, both to those people and to me watching those people because I
yeah.
can see it. I can see it in their face, lighting up like that.
Well, that's kind of the role you guys serve with these signings is like you set the stage and you're really creating the platform for people to come in and connect. And so then you're almost bearing witness to people's reconnections. I mean, there's been so many that I've even been a part of where
Right.
people are seeing each other for the first time in 30 years, like maybe even since the production of whatever the film was, or they might not have even seen each other on set, and here they get to meet for the first time. Those kinds of connections are so incredible to see,
Yeah,
and
the
it's so
reunions are
cool.
really fun when you have three or four members from the cast who haven't been together for 20 years
Yeah.
and suddenly they're all there. It's like they get young again. It
Yeah.
is so
Oh
funny.
yeah.
Then they go out afterwards and they may never see each other for 20 years again after that.
Right. But a lot of that conversation happens prior to the doors even opening, when everyone's just sitting there chatting, and that's when the energy, there's like a electricity in the air. It's so exciting on the nights of those events, and
It
you've
is.
just
It's really fun, and it's you can't. reproduce that. That it all kind of, like you said earlier, happens spontaneously.
Right.
It's the right people, the right chemistry, the right project. And we just did a big Phantasm signing just a couple of weeks ago because the director had written a new book, which was short stories in the Phantasm universe. So
Hmm.
he's there signing the book. I've got cast members there signing because the book wasn't about them, so they were signing other things like Reggie Bannister and all of those people are over
Right.
there. One of the guys is the guy who sang a song in the movie that wasn't Reggie, went up on stage after every group of people came through and he would perform his like 10-minute repertoire over again each time. And then at the end of all those people coming through and signing, we had the car out back behind the building, and Reggie got up and went and sat in the driver's seat, and people could get in the car and have a photo op with Reg in the driver's seat. It was like, we'll never do that again. That will never happen again.
Yeah. That's like when I brought Christine in for the
That
Blu-ray
was a
release
fun
of
day. How
Christine.
many people did we have signing? Like 15?
Oh my gosh. Well, that was a great example of one of these times when we have a core group that we wanted, people who had
Right.
agreed to be there, and then people just started showing up. And
We had all the boys together again.
yeah,
That, which
yeah,
hadn't happened. We had about 3 or 4 of the FX guys who talked about what they made different parts of Christine out of. So some of it was rubber; it would bounce back out, and
right.
some of it would crinkle,
Yeah,
and then of course the big thing was out at the curb. We had Christine, and then we had people being able to take photo ops with the car. That was an
right.
amazing time. You facilitated that thing nicely.
Oh, that was so fun, man. And the Sharknado was cool too, with the big
Yeah.
shark prop that was there. There's just been so many memorable things.
Bob Burns when he used to come in and bring the original Kong armature
Yeah,
from King Kong.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. All right. She's gonna hate this, but I want to talk about Sue.
Okay.
When did you first meet Sue?
You'd never believe this, but I met her at the bar. And the reason you wouldn't believe it is because she doesn't drink.
Right.
But her friend owned a bar and she moved down here from like Port Hueneme or up that way in California. And the only person she knew was this friend, this neighbor who owned the bar. So she would go to the bar. I happened to go to the same bar because it was across the street from the laundromat. And
Oh,
I had it down to a system because it was 1 beer for a wash and 2 beers for a dry. So I knew that I'd have my clothes done and I'd be drinking. And that evolved, and that's how we got to kind of
that's
fun.
amazing. Yeah.
It
Okay.
is.
So when you guys first met, what were the things you guys were bonding over? Was it genre related? Did you talk about film and
A
literature and
lot of
stuff
it
like
was
that?
genre related because, like, Sue collected Stephen King and Kuntz and all those people and read, and I read those people too, but I was also into the horror films. So we had a mutual love of the genre going on there. And in fact, I remember after we had talked sometimes, it was like, let's let's get out of here and go down the street or something because we all knew everybody in there. And
Yeah.
so we started to go and we were walking down Magnolia, and Sue said to me, "You're not a serial killer. You're not a mass murderer or anything, are you?" And I said, "No, I kill them one at a time." And then we were hooked.
You guys are the best. I just love it. And the reason I say she's going to hate this, for those who don't know, Sue, is that she's notoriously camera shy. She lets Dell's hair fly in the wind all day long, but she will run like Bigfoot as soon as she sees a camera or someone putting their phone up where
Yep.
it's real obvious. But
Yeah,
you guys had
she's gone. She was always shy. When I met her, she was shy. She would not have talked to all of these people or the customers or the people in the films and the books and stuff. Never in a million years, except she is on her territory. When she's in the
mm,
store, it's the palace grounds, and and she's okay. She's perfectly fine there, and she's great with it. But that shyness still does carry over to the camera stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. You guys have this incredible you talked earlier about how the team moves for signings. I mean, it's really the heart of the whole shop is you guys and that mom and pop thing element that you mentioned earlier. How do you guys divide duties at the store on a day
Well,
to
of
day,
course, some
like
of
you
it
even said?
depends on who can show up. That because any people that are working for us, it's all volunteer. Everything is volunteer for the just to keep the store running because they have a love of the genre. They enjoy being with the celebs or the us. God forbid, we don't know why, or whatever, because they do it. And somebody was in the store today. They're getting ready to do. They're filming a documentary coming up on Monday, and they were in just checking the space out to see. And somebody who had been there before, who was on the crew that had recommended that they shoot there, said, "Yeah, this place is like a machine." And I kind of liked that comment when I heard it because it is. Everybody is a working cog in the gears in there, and it runs smooth. When it doesn't, boy, you know it too. It because it is timed, it is well oiled, and when something
Yeah.
comes out, like you did order the books for the signing, right? I mean, when something doesn't happen, then you have to, start doing some hoops and jumping through them.
Right, right. Uh, the shop has been the setting for a number of things being shot, from special feature documentary interviews and things
A lot of
to
special
being.
features. It's had scenes from movies. I have to think Dave Dakota has probably shot about 5 different movie scenes in there. There was a documentary, not the Mick Garris series, but a documentary called Masters of Horror that Mike Mendez and Dave Parker
Hmm,
had put together interviews with Wes Craven and John Carpenter and all those. That a lot of that was shot in the store over a period of a couple of days. The
yeah.
interviews.
And you've ended up, how did you end up on screen? How did you make the transition from page to camera?
Well, I had been an actor in Michigan in dinner theater and stuff like that.
Hmm,
So I had worked for a company called Theater of the Arts in Michigan the PR person, and then at the same time I had worked with other theater groups that were doing things in and around the city of Detroit. And so that was kind of there. I mean, I studied Shakespeare from Michael Moriarty. I studied improv from Del Close,
hmm,
who was a member of Second City,
yeah.
um, who now has his skull in Second City. I don't know if you know that
I
story,
did not.
but when he died, he had them keep his skull, not a skull he owned, but his skull. And it sets in Second City in Chicago, where I don't know if it's still there. This has been many, many years. And what's really funny is the connections that happened because I was doing a show for Jonathan Round, who was a folk singer, comedian, whatever, who wrote this show. And we needed to do improv during the show. And Del Close came in from Second City in Chicago for a couple weeks and taught us improv.
Hmm,
At the same time, I was working at a company in Greektown in Detroit called Theater of the Arts. And they put on a show while I was there called Bleacher Bums, which came out of a theater originally in Chicago. Years later, out here, I was talking with Stuart Gordon and Carolyn Gordon, and they were the people at the theater in Chicago that did Bleacher. I mean,
wow.
it all just webs together. It's amazing. You'll be talking to somebody and suddenly, boom, there's the connection. But
Yep.
you've been out here long enough that as big as LA, it's still a small community.
Yeah.
Everybody knows each other. Hell, I did that short film on Halloween with you.
Yeah.
That was just something that you made. I don't even know the original purpose
Hmm.
because it was an anniversary, I think, of a
Well,
Halloween thing.
what we had put we were putting the original back in theaters for the first time, because
Right.
this predates Fathom events and all the boutique bookings of now. And so it was a hard sell. I mean, finding a theater chain to pick it up was tough, and I
Because
eventually
they were
found a
to show
partner.
it before the film, right?
Yeah, this was for that. So, well, Screen Vision ended up being the partner on it, and they wanted some additional content to draw people into theaters, because they're like, it's kind of an old movie. I mean, at least they bought into it, right? But anyway,
Right.
so yeah, they wanted a little documentary piece to run before it, and then yeah, so I put that together, shot you and Tyler and a few other people. That was a really cool experience doing that little documentary, and I thought of you because you're such an authority on this stuff, and I love that you're an authority organically. This is through genuinely standing in a room, having conversations with all these people, having those interactions, seeing how the
Right.
fans, and also you have your finger directly on the pulse of the genre fan, because not only are you having the conversations, also sales are dictating what's working and what's not. So
Right.
you guys have seen so much come and go. So yeah, you're the first person that I called for that.
Yeah, I remember when we started there, not only was it the horror conventions every weekend somewhere in America with
Mhm.
people signing, half of the product did not exist. It
Right.
wasn't until manufacturers realized that there could be money in this
Yeah.
that you started seeing, action figures and Frankenstein cookie jars and different things start to pop up on the radar because they never thought there was a market for it. And they were certainly right in the respect of there wasn't a centralized market or a centralized way to meet the fan base who would appreciate these things until it wasn't like our doing. But we kind of came right at the same time when Comic Cons were growing out of just being comic conventions and
Right.
people were seeing the interest in something else. I still get amazed at how long it takes some of the film studios and companies to realize there's an afterlife in their products. Look how long it took for Universal Monsters to actually start putting things out. Fans were like going, how come there isn't a creature from the Black Lagoon thing? Yeah, we go back that far. How come there isn't any of these things available for me to have a tchotchke or an action figure or a poster or whatever?
Yeah.
And another one that happened with I saw was Nightmare Before Christmas. They had no clue how to market it, and then Juno, I think, was the company,
Mhm.
um, got a license and picked up on some of that stuff. And whoa, my gosh, it's selling. There's people that might be interested in this. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think it also dovetails with the real expansion of the internet too, because it was no
yes,
longer ads relegated to genre audience magazines, which are, with each descriptor I throw in there, you're narrowing the audience, and that's harder for a studio to justify investment in, I think, historically, because how do you reach people in an effective, cost effective way,
right.
and then justify putting, that's why all those vintage toys go for such high dollars, because there just wasn't very much of that. And when do you think that would you, I look back and I think Todd McFarlane and the Movie Maniacs line, when those figures first came out, which was
Right.
Michael, Norman Bates, I think Wishmaster was part of the original run. There's a Jason in there, and
And it
even
was
Blair
followed
Witch.
by the Clive Barker figures of people with chains hooked to them and being ripped apart. I don't remember what the name of those figures were, but
Yeah,
there was a series one, two, three of that too.
yeah. Nothing like that really had existed, at least in a mass market way before. Do you think that was kind of the beginning of the modern age of these incredible collector figures? Do you think that would have been it, McFarlane?
He was right there with those at the right time, but it probably predates it with garage kits.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a couple of artists in Japan that were making kind of usually it was a feminine figure, but like tortured souls and
Hmm.
things like that. But they were kind of kits that you had to put together and you had to paint it. And somebody like me wouldn't have looked twice at it because it would be like I just pour a can of paint on it, and that would be it. Because a lot
Yeah.
of us just don't have that artistic ability, um, and those were going for big bucks at the time. And I don't even remember who the artists were. And they also put out art. It was also the time of Giger and
Mm.
his books coming out, the great big tall books
Yeah. Yeah.
with the single pages. All of that was part of that. It was like a whole beginning happened from a bunch of different areas.
Mm.
McFarlane with the toys, Sideshow with their original figures,
Yeah.
Giger with the print books and the calendars. And it was also the time when you could get the calendars and the books on that physicians museum in Philadelphia that would
Mm.
show heads in jars and all the different things that they have in the museum in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It all kind of happened within the same 3 years or something, and it all kicked into gear.
Christine's a great example of that. As a kid, I never stopped going to antique stores, toy stores, trying to find a 58 Plymouth, and there just wasn't one. There was a really crappy Johnny Lightning toy early on that looks it was a terrible
Which are
mold or
back
whatever.
out, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, right. So
Yeah,
here we go again, right? But you think about when I look at the market now and all of these toys from what is it, Hollywood or Hollywood's the line. I can't remember the name of the manufacturer, but there's scene specific Christines now. You can get the burned car. You
right.
can get it's it's wild, and it's similar in physical media too, because right now is really a golden age for this stuff. So, and your store brings these under one roof, but for collectors looking for film preservation, because I've always maintained physical media is film preservation,
Right.
and there's so much stuff that's been lost to time, especially old films that have been just literally melted away in vaults and things, never to be seen again. And we're in danger of that again with the streaming stuff, with services who don't really care about history.
We got in some carded figures of the guy from Dr. Caligari from the silent movie, and it wasn't the spooky looking Nosferatu-y guy with the heavy eyeshadow all around it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a guy in the top hat, that kind of plump, and I'm going, what the heck? Because all we could do when I was coming up was order stuff from Famous Monsters of Filmland, which was always things like a poster for your bedroom door of Frankenstein, keep out, stuff like that. And then the younger kids were able to get things like Garbage Pail Kid stickers that had ghoulish kind of things on them,
Yeah.
And there were trading cards of the black and white scenes from the old movies of like the creature carrying the girl and all of that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. There was nothing to buy. There was nothing. And then it all happened at once, like the flower bloomed. I don't know what it was, but
Yeah, that's incredible. You've done some special feature work yourself. I know that we talked about, what was it, the Inner Sanctum series at
right.
one point. How many commentaries did you do on that release? It was a Mill Creek release, I think.
It was a Mill Creek release. There was 4 movies, and different ones of us each had one of the films. They were like programmers. It was Lon Chaney Jr. slumming. Of course, Lon
Yeah,
Chaney Jr. slummed a lot. It was like Lon Chaney Jr. slumming because that series was popular on radio 10 years before that. And
yeah,
so they would do these hour-long films, and there was 4 of them, and they packaged it all together. So it'd be like Courtney Joyner would be on one of them, and I'd be on one of them, and different people along the way. Yeah,
that's
so that
cool.
was fun.
Yeah,
And I did a couple of. I sat in the room. They needed somebody. Very cohesive conversation from me. I understand. I sat in the room for Alligator when I think it was Blue Underground was putting out Alligator. They had Louis Teague and Robert Forrester doing the commentary as the movie played, and they needed someone to keep the conversation going because I'm so good with speech, as you can tell. So they hired me, and they would give you the film the night before, so you could watch it, have it fresh in your head, make notes or whatever, and then go in. Because when you do that, I don't know if you've done a couple of those, but they just show it. You
Yeah.
just talk while it's playing, and
Yeah.
they go, "Good, done. That's a great commentary." It's not cut. Let's go back and get that.
Yeah.
So that one was interesting because I walked into the room. Robert Forrester gave me a letter opener. He gives everybody letter openers. That's what he used to do as a president. Here's a letter opener. And Louis Teague came in, and the film started. We're watching the film, and the first scene, I think, was one of the first scenes, was from like the alligator's POV, looking up from the LA River at the city up there. And I said, "That's a really interesting shot." I'm talking to Lewis, who directed the movie.
Mm.
"Where was this shot?" And he said to me, "I don't know. I haven't seen it in 20 years." And I knew I was in trouble at that point for the
Oh,
next 2 hours.
yeah.
But luckily, Robert Forrester stepped up and helped keep the conversation and everything going. And we got through it. I also did Cry of the Mummy. It was shot in Egypt.
Mm.
It was shot with pyramids and everything else. Great production value because the director lived there,
Okay.
and that was fun. The movie was, but it was fun because it was more. Every time you do something, whoever is watching this as an artist, whether you want to do it, in fact, it's better if you don't want to do it and you have to do it. It increases your skill, it increases your ability, it makes you better at what you do because you don't learn anything from getting it right and winning. You only learn when you get it wrong and something goes bad and you have to work your way out of it. And I think people should realize that. When you
Yeah.
get good contacts, you've had this happen to you, I know, a bunch of times. "Oh, so and so is having that party. I'm really beat. I don't want to go. I don't know anybody there." You go and you make one of the best contacts of the year
Yeah.
because you happen to go that you would have missed out on.
Yeah.
So always do, I mean, don't be stupid about it, but always do things that are a stretch for you. Try to get out and get out of your little world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the pathway to growth for sure. And I think we need to find boundaries within ourselves and then push on those walls. Because
Yeah.
if you get too comfortable, then you sort of become complacent.
Because if you can already do it, what's the point? Why are you doing it? The
Yeah,
paycheck,
exactly.
because most of these things don't really have much in the way of a paycheck, as you know. I know.
I remember you talking about that alligator thing because we ended up doing a signing because I produced the 4K for Shout
Uh
on the
huh.
on Alligator 1 and 2. And when I came in to set it up with you guys or whatever, and you said, "Let me tell you, have you talked to Lewis yet? Because let me tell you this story about him not remembering anything." And I have to say, and like I told you that day, I must have got lucky with him the first time that I interviewed him because he was really fantastic. And we ended
Or
up
maybe
doing,
Robert had given him the old elbow,
yeah,
you know.
right, right. But I also did Lady in Red with him, and then there was one other one that I've done with him
Yeah,
too.
because
So
after that, he signed in Dark Delicacies, and he was wonderful to be
yeah,
around, and we had a good time. I don't know whether he wasn't feeling good, he was just Mr.
yeah,
Grumpy that day, whatever it was. But after that, I have met him a couple times, and one was a sign at the store. He was great.
yeah. And that was another night when we were all sitting there signing, and people from the production just kept coming in. It's like, oh, here's the writer. Yeah, we had, I don't remember if sales was there or not, but it's like, but here's like all these different effects people, and we had to bring extra chairs in. I think we had to bring another table into the room because
Right?
it just kept growing and growing. It's so exciting.
Half of the
Okay.
fun at those signings for Dark Delicacies too is like you'll be signing, or a movie you're involved with will be signing. You'll be sitting there with all the other people in the movie, and the people that aren't involved but are just coming in to support their friends in the industry.
Yeah.
Sometimes it turns into a real who's who, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I can't imagine the stories. I've been nudging you for a long time about a documentary or something because you guys have an incredible the laundry list of signings and the people who have been through there. is just amazing. And so,
And people have to realize half of what we're talking about is films and that kind of thing. But also there was authors, there was composers, there
right,
was artists. There every area that is involved in putting horror together has been there.
right. It's amazing. And this is the final year. We talked a little bit about the decision to close the shop. You and I have discussed this, but if you're open to it, and if you're not, I get it. Why not sell the store? I know you guys for a while were considering it. You've
We
decided
did.
just to close the doors. What's behind that decision?
There were two things that kind of put the kibosh on that. Well, one of them was we still have a thing in our lease that we could do 5 more years,
Hmm.
just keep going, and it would just go up the same that it goes up yearly, which is 2.5% for the lease. And we were thinking, how great would this be? Somebody buys it, takes over the lease. They have 5 more years in the same spot. They don't have to create a new store. They don't have to.
Right.
So I sent the contract to the lawyer, and the lawyer goes, no, you don't want to do that. Because if they came in and took over the 5 years, in 2.5 years, I could be laying out catching snow in Minnesota or somewhere and get a tap on the shoulder and go, oh, they've reneged on their deal. You have to come back and finish working these last 3 years or pay
Yeah.
off what they owe because they haven't been paying their rent because it's off of our lease. So they would have had to negotiate an entirely new lease with the landlord.
Hmm.
So they wouldn't have been gaining anything that way.
Yeah.
I was keeping the trademark, so that I could do pop-ups. I can do online. I could do conventions if I want to.
Hmm.
Whatever. So we're keeping that. And the last thing that finally convinced me was Sue said no. she she said no because she said, "Look, we worked this for 30 years to get the reputation we wanted. And we could have somebody come in and take over. And in 2 years, some schmuck has made the place have a bad name, a bad rep."
Yeah.
And she had a pretty good point because the first people that started talking to us about we might be interested in taking this over, we would just buy it and we'd hire people to work it. And Sue said, no, no, you got to be there every day. You got to be there every day you're open and run it and have it done the way you want it to done, or quality control goes right in the toilet.
Yeah.
So that combination of things changed our mind, and we decided not to. Especially someone coming to my place in the Bahamas and going, "Hey, you got to come back to work."
That was quite a leap from snow in Minnesota to the
Snow, wherever I
Bahamas.
end up, yeah,
Well, that makes sense because I mean, this thing has been you guys from A to Z. And
yeah.
that's that in itself is so incredibly rare. Regardless of the duration of this thing being open, the fact that you guys have been it from beginning to end, I think is
You,
such an incredible story.
exactly, and it's not the fact that we've got money to burn by any means. I mean, we don't have a lot of money because the money went back into the store on a regular basis. But we have a legacy,
Yep.
and I've even been talking to people about some what do you call it, where the deals where they use your name and pay
Like
you
license it.
licensing.
Yeah.
I've been spoken to by a couple of people that are interested in talking about licensing the name. Nothing better than passive income.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I wrote these two words down 30 years ago.
that's
Yes, you
right.
can pay me to use those two words.
That's right. It's kind of like, and I wouldn't mind I do consulting, Oh yeah, you should do that different. Pay me. I'm all for that kind of
Uh,
thing.
as you know, you can also just dive in on your acting career. You can give it all the weight and all the effort. I've looked back at your resume of these films you've been involved with, and the most frequent character that pops up, of course, is Renfield.
Right.
You've stepped into the shoes, the manacles, the whatever of Renfield a number of times over the years. You've also played a lot of other
Oh, you just
characters.
froze on me. Hang on.
Okay. Let me
Let's
know when I
see. I
come
think I
back.
can figure it out this time.
Oh, you froze too.
There
So
we go. There I just unfroze you. You froze on me.
your magic, magic. All right, but
So the last thing I heard was you said you've stepped into those shoes a number of times.
that's right. Yeah, as far as Renfield goes. But you've also played a lot of other memorable characters, and what I'd like to do is run through a few of these here.
Or
And
unforgettable. They can't get that shit out of their head. So
all
yeah.
right, so some of the great Dell performances. We have Bar Patron. We
That
have
was one of my big ones. Yeah.
we have
That was
Drunk.
for Clive.
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that
was
was in
part
Lord of Illusions,
in
right?
Lord of Illusions. He put me because I won that contest. He pulled
Yeah.
my number, and he put me at the bar. And I was supposed to be a guy with his girlfriend on a date. And next to us was Scott Bakula and the other guy that the scene was going on about. And with us, there was a magician standing behind us doing that roll the money on the quarter on your
Oh
knuckles,
yeah, yeah.
back and forth.
So
So
great.
we did that. Clive said to me, Dell, here's what you have to do. We'll be shooting here at the Magic Castle all day. You have to sit here and drink beer. And I said, for you, Clive, I'll.
Twist my arm. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we have Drunk, we have Dell, we have Dark Dell, we have Screaming Townsfolk, we have Bum.
Screaming Townsfolk. That's a good one. I did that with Brink in the Ted Newsom movie. That was a takeoff on 50s sci fi movies.
Right.
And I was standing next to Brink in a parking lot, and she was going, Glenn, put the bus down. So that was, that was a rare moment for me. Store patron. I was a store patron in my own store, by the way. They were shooting inside Dark Delicacies. Could you pretend you're a customer?
Yeah. I can do that. I think I know
Yeah,
how
I
that
can do that.
works.
Do you have
Right.
a beer? I did the first movie I made out here was one of the rare feature length 8mm movies,
Mm.
which I did with
And
Chris
what film was
Michaels.
that?
It was called, is a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
My wife just shouted from the other room, Limp Fangs.
Oh. Oh yeah, I see it here. Falstaff. Falstaff.
Falstaff. See, that's close to McDougal.
Yeah. I don't know where I pulled this McDougal from when I was just jotting down some notes the other day. But anyway, I mean, what's amazing is that you've done so much, and I'm sure a lot of these roles are people who are just come in the store, fans of the store who frequent, right, Dark Delicacies, and they say, "Hey, Dell, you want
The
to come
last
do
one
this
I
thing?"
did was a movie called Transmission,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just last year. And it was something. The movie I understand was pretty good. I haven't seen it. People said I like this. I'm having a good time watching this. It was a sci-fi movie about a guy who is watching TV, and he keeps changing the channels, and there's some subliminal message happening. Came out last year. There's a sci-fi horror festival in London, and it was one of the midnight screenings at this festival. And people said it's really good. It's about a guy who is changing the channels on a TV set, and the story kind of develops. There's messages coming through from the thing. And it was a good role for me. I had one scene where I was talking about someone stole the movie from me, blah, blah, blah. And then the next time I'm up, I get hit by a train. So it was perfect. Yeah.
All right, so here we are in these are the last footsteps of Dark Delicacies, the final reel. What can we look forward to in these last months that the store is open? And have you guys pinned down what will be a final event yet?
We have not, but I'm sure we'll be doing something the end of March 25 or the first week or two of April 25. I don't know what yet. A lot of it depends on what's going on. But
Right.
people are already coming in and going, I want that display case. I'll take that and that bookcase. So the scavengers are out. It's what's going to happen when I die and they have a yard sale. It's
I was gonna say, yeah, what are these vultures swooping in on this
vultures
thing?
have swooped in. But Sue said that because it's our last year, she wanted to have as many big events as she could.
Yeah.
So she's been packing it in. If she doesn't have a heart attack before this is over, it'll be surprising. We just did that huge Phantasm thing. We had a big Mick Garris thing for The Shining last
Mhm.
week. We've got the thing for In Search of Darkness, with a lot of people, like 12, 13 people showing up for this signing. And she's got that kind of thing plugged along. So, and some of it's not the sheer numbers. Like after In Search of Darkness, the next thing is the Charles Fleischer signing. So that's
Oh,
still a big event, but
so
it's just
cool.
one person.
Right. Yeah.
But
Well,
they can
Del, I'm
all wait. Here's the shameless plug. They can all see the upcoming schedule and pre-order anything for it by going to the website at darkdel.com.
and I also want to recommend to people going. What I love that you guys do, you're not marking books up when they're signed.
No,
You guys aren't adding a bunch like, it's an extra 50% on there or something. So you can look through the website, just like if you were to go in the store, although nowhere near as expansive. But the signed copies are often available on a store on the website,
yeah, they're just
obviously
in the
prior.
bookcase that are left over from the signing event.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of cool. There is a store down the street that I'm not going to mention who carries toys and things like we do, but they're like 35% higher. We just charge retail. It's not like we're giving you the discount off the retail. We have to charge retail to make it as a little store, but they'll be like 35% more. So I have a lot of customers who will go by their place. What's new? Let's look around. What's cool? All right, let's go down to Dark Dell and buy it.
Well, it's throughout my whole time in the business so far. I mean, you guys are always, I try to make time to stop by and say hi at the very least. And I just treasure every memory of all those conversations, and not to mention the signings and things over time. And
Thank you. Well, you
I
do. You pop in as often as you're out here on the left coast. So
well, I really, it has always felt like home walking into the store, and it doesn't matter what location it is. And I just love you and Sue to death, and appreciate all you've done for the genre, for the community. And it's sad that it's coming to an end here, but at the same time, for all the reasons we discussed, it makes all the sense in the world. And you're going out the right way. You're keeping
standing
it
up.
standing up, important, but
Yeah.
also it never did change hands. It always
No.
remained your vision, and you
Yeah.
guys have stayed true to that. And that's
Even more than
that can
my
inspire a
vision,
story.
it's Sue's vision, because she
Yeah,
really, as you said, she might not be in pictures. I'm the big mouth, but she is the person running the store,
right.
setting up events, picking out stock, taking care of everything, and then I come along and go, "Look what we've got here, new for you." I have the easy part,
You're the barker.
the
She's
barker.
the show runner. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it.
Well, thanks
But
again for being on, Dell. I really appreciate it.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I just love him, and I love Sue. I love their relationship. It's so inspiring. The fact that they've stood the test of time together. They met when they did in life, which wasn't when they were kids, but they hung in there. They had this amazing bond through what they are passionate about, and that store and the people that came in there really became family to them. It's a bond over creativity. If you have that in your relationship, I cannot stress enough, it is valuable. It is rare. It's an unusual commodity to bump into someone that you blend with on so many fronts, and those including the creative ones, which are so vital to those of us who thrive on that stuff. I mentioned earlier that they have a few signings coming up. On Thursday, March 13th, they have a signing with Cory Doctorow, and he's the author of Picks and Shovels, a Martin Hench novel. So that's happening on the 13th. A couple days later, on the 15th, they have one for the Blu-ray of There's a Zombie Outside from writer-director Michael Varrati. And then beyond that, on March 22nd, they have a signing for Dell's new book, What Fresh Hell Is This? Dark Tales. You can order some of these through their site, darkdel.com. Those can show up to your door signed at no additional charge outside of shipping, of course. So check that out. If you can make your way to Burbank and be part of any of these, it's going to be really special. And from what I understand, there may be some big sale that they're having at the end too. So stay tuned to their website for that information. As I mentioned earlier, you can find me at justinbeahm.com. The book that I have just released is Roadside Memories, Beloved and Bizarre Attractions from North America's Past, available through my site signed or through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or anywhere else you get books. And keep your eye on my site for all the latest and upcoming. I look forward to chatting with you guys on the next episode, and until then, please do take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Justin Beahm Radio Hour. Copyright 2025 Reverend Entertainment.